you had to seal up the caves. You would see a certain entrance, to it. And so you'd lay down the rifle fire to it, and then you advance with your flamethrower, and you shoot the flame in that respect. Then demolition packs would come in, and you'd seal the cave up so that there was no more coming out of that cave. There was a mass destruction of human beings from that.
You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade.
To meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
Born in a little town called Continental, Ohio. At that time, in '42, I was still an immature kid, you might say. And I had heard of Hitler and what was going on in Europe. So you had some preparation of what it was like,
When did you join the Marine Corps?
When?
Yes, sir.
Well, this big old sergeant walked in the room and he said, "Son, I know you were supposed to go to the Navy, but you have just volunteered for the Marine Corps."
So you wanted to join the Navy?
Yes. And so he picked two of us. He said, "You and you." And that's how I got into the Marines. I had always been an active kid, high school, and throughout athletics, in shape, a farm kid, I had all type of muscles from shoveling corn and doing farm work. What happened to me in boot training was just a normal process of life, And I was able to handle most everything that they threw at me. But I survived all the boot training, and it was awakening. It was to take this young boy and grow him up to a man real quick.
Now, you were originally supposed to be part of a Marine replacement unit that headed to Iwo Jima, but plans got changed. You now believe that if you had gone there, you probably would have been killed there. Explain what happened and explain why you believe that.
Well, the whole thing started out in North Carolina at Camp Lejeune, Early in that morning when everybody was shipping out, why this corporal came along and he said, I need you and you, and we'll put you in as a supernumer. And there were 12 of us, and they put us in the parade ground and sat us down by a big tree and said, "You stay there till we call you." And never really understood exactly why this happened, but apparently because of certain outfits that might need one else or something, they would grab one of us at the time. Well, the whole thing was that when the train left, there were 3 of us still there. And so we were then recycled with a new group coming in from Parris Island and for retraining. And because of that, that group that I had trained with, had been with all this time, they ended up going to Iwo Jima. And Earhart, who was a friend, as soon as he walked on the island of Iwo Jima, he received a bullet right square in the head, they tell me. and he was killed almost immediately. I just know that I would be in that same group and walk those same steps that they did. And very few of the platoon that I traveled with and trained with on Parris Island never left the island, you know, at that time at all. So you're witnessing me here today, but I'm sure that I would have not made it.
Sir, instead of going to Iwo Jima, you were sent to Guadalcanal for additional training. What kind of training did you do there?
Yeah. Well, just before we went to Guadalcanal, we went to another little island called the Russell, one of the Russell Islands. And we continued the basic training, the same as we did somewhat later when we went to Guadalcanal. And that was more of, shall we say, fighting in the M1 rifle, and then continuing on with, we'll say, what we thought at that time more like jungle warfare, and learning different tactics along that line, not knowing that Okinawa was going to be more of a flat area and trees, but not the dense jungle, of course. It was just a few days before we actually got to Okinawa that we were told. And we were in groups, and they informed us, you know, that there was an island out there that we were going to take that was closer to the homeland of Japan. It'd be a stepping stone after we secured this island. And then on that April 1st, Easter Sunday, woke up very early in the morning, of course, and it was still dark, and called in for breakfast, steak and all that stuff, the last big meal, you know. And then as the sun comes up and we look out, and I never saw so many ships in my whole life, all over the horizon. And you just say, you gotta be kidding, you know. The next thing, of course, is wave after wave, and I think if I reflect properly on it, it was about 2 hours later that finally we climbed over the side of the ship and down the rope ladder, you know, and got in the Higgins boat and went ashore and all. And by this time, we were informed, you know, that there was not a vast amount of enemy resistance that time, and that they had already advanced farther than what they planned, you know. It was different than what you had mentally planned. That you expected to be pinned down on the beach, and it just didn't happen. You walked in there like as if it's a Sunday walk at all. And it was a beautiful day, no doubt about it, April 1st, 1945, you know.
So were you relieved, or did you wonder what they really had planned?
No, we're smart enough to know that the enemy was there someplace, and it was just a matter of time. But we went in straight through to the airport, turned left north, And we then secured the northern portion of the island law. And we ran into resistance a certain amount, within a few days, and wiped that out, and then continued on to the end of the island, the north part, and then started back towards the south. So we saw very little resistance, but we didn't see masses of group. You didn't see what we felt like you would see a bonsai attack or anything like that. But there was just light resistance.
How do you fight an enemy you can't see?
When you're fired upon, you have some idea that where that is coming from. We just sprayed the areas, that we felt possibly might be coming from, and that's what we did, and the time on Sugar Loaf, when we were right up there on top, and the next thing you know is they're lobbing grenades back up over the hill. They come out the side of the hill, and then they would throw grenades up over. And you still never saw the enemy. All you did was finally understand that explosion had happened, or you felt it did real close to you. And it was, a weak feeling to know that, come on out and fight like a man, shall we say, and so you had this depressed feeling somewhat that, hey, maybe the time will come when we'll corner this sucker, and then we'll find out exactly how you really are fighting, So I guess that's the best way to explain it, that it's just a unknown feeling. It's like years before that, I used to go pheasant hunting back on the farm, and you didn't see any pheasants, and you just kept advancing until the pheasant would go up, Okay, so that's about what happened, is that you advanced so much on this island, and you cornered them more and more that they had to somewhat come out, Sugar Loaf was the predominant one that mostly hand-to-hand, and it was light, a certain amount of that, because they would come out of the hole and go back in, and you'd say, well, they came out of someplace, but all you did was just got the effect of the explosion of the grenades or mortar being fired, and explosions of that.
Did you chase them into the caves?
Yes. Basically, when with carrying a flamethrower, you had to seal up the caves, and you would see a certain entrance, to it, and so you'd lay down the rifle fire to it, and then you advance with your flamethrower, and you shoot the flame in that respect. And so then demolition packs would come in, and you'd seal the cave up so that there was no more coming out of that cave unless they dug themselves out if they survived, of the penetration. But up to this time, you have ships out there firing, and you have your own artillery, and there was a mass destruction of human beings from that. The destruction of mankind on Sugar Loaf was unheard of, Someone would be replaced in the morning, and by nightfall, you'd settle down a little bit then and say, hey, remember those two guys that came in this morning? Where are they now? What happened? And someone would say a couple words to you in foul language and say, well, they got killed,
Tell me about your friend Daniel Torrey.
Daniel was, shall we say, a sweet guy. So Daniel and I were finally in front of Sugar Loaf, and we had, later in the afternoon, the whole company had come around Sugar Loaf and dug into this position kind of like a ravine. It was more like a ditch, And that's where we began to get fired upon from Sugar Loaf. They had gone back into Sugar Loaf and assumed their old position from another hill, and started firing at us, And so we started firing back, and we did a lot of shooting, I remember. And as a result of that, we got a lot of response because of that. They knew where it was coming from. And so it wasn't very much longer than the next thing I know is Torrey says, hey, I'm hit. And he said, I'm hit right here. And so, okay, so open up his shirt and everything and get this Band-Aid out to put on that, and give him a shot of morphine, a little ample, and next thing I know is he just passes out. And not knowing medically anything at that time speak of, I thought he was dead, but actually he went into shock. And because of lack of medical facilities right there or something, he passed out, he died, And after that, we just sort of push him aside, and we continue to fire back at that unseen enemy in front, Before we knew it, this corporal comes along, and he's now trying to tell us where the enemy is firing from, And of course, we already knew exactly, approximately where. And next thing you know, he gets shot in the leg, and he went down. The bullet went through there and fractured the femur, and he was bleeding. And so I cutting off his pants to put a tourniquet on, and he passes out, or he goes into shock. And there again, no knowledge, so you just throw them aside and go on because you've got other things to take care of. You've got your own life to protect, And so you continue to go back to firing at the unknown enemy again. Quite a day.
Well, another day that I know you won't forget is June 11th, 1945. That's the day that you were wounded. Explain what was happening and how you were injured.
We were advancing towards another hill, which we didn't know the name of it or too much geographical, except another hill, and we just keep going, All I know is that an explosion took place, and I was thrown in the air, and eventually came out of it after I was knocked out, and then came back to life, shall we say, And by this time, everybody else had left. The whole company had continued on for their objective, and left me there. And to this day, I say to some of the guys that have survived Okinawa, I said, you son of bitches, you left me. You didn't stop and wonder what happened. Well, when you're knocked out, laying there, you're dead as far as it goes. And they got their war to fight, so they continue on. So eventually I wake up to a portion that I shake off the problem that I have, You have shrapnel all over you and you're bleeding. Not that you have to put tourniquets on it, but just a flesh taken out, And so you go back to the people down here, you see somebody doing something, And so you go to those people. And those people, what they were a medical outfit, and they had set up a temporary surgical, basically, or a first aid type of thing, And I went back to them and I said, hey, can you take care of some of my problems? And they said, buddy, forget it. We got other problems, a lot worse than yours. So they just pushed me aside, And this sergeant comes along that I had seen him before, and he always carried this 45 automatic, and you wondered, what did he ever do, But somehow he appeared in this picture. And the next thing I know is he gets shot, and this cave has a large opening, and he gets shot, and I immediately say, what is this medical group doing, setting up a portable thing here right in front of a big cave when you know that the Japs should come out and all that? And I thought, you know, I should take this machine gun and I should go back into that cave myself. But no, my day is slowly coming to an end. I don't want anything to do with anything else. That was the end of my battle. Basically, I'm done. I'm saying my war is over, you know.
What are you most proud of about your service?
Most proud of. I survived.